Hello, hello. Yeah, hello and welcome to AltLayer's RAS Day, short for Rollups as a Service Day. RAS is a virtual event with the goal to bring together experts in the rollup and modular space and to talk about the present and future of rollups, but from a rollups as a service perspective. That is a world where we have many application-tailored rollups. We have an exciting lineup of talks, but let me kickstart this event by giving a talk on why build rollups as a service platform in the first place and how AltLayers is contributing to the space in general. So, why build rollups? In particular, why build rollups as service solutions, such as AltLayer? Now, if you look at the space today, right, it's quite well established by now that modular design philosophy is the only one that can come and scale applications. So that's capable to provide applications the right kind of DA bandwidth, the right kind of block space bandwidth. And so chains that are monolithic in nature, in particular, for example, Ethereum, they have started to adopt this modular stack and basically focus on settlement and DA needs for applications. While the main component, which is the settlement layer, one of the components, which is the settlement layer of the modular stack, has started to move out of Ethereum, right? And we have started to see all sorts of execution layers, also known as rollups these days, to pop up. And in fact, if you look around, you could see in the space today different types of rollups depending on that have different features. For example, you could have rollups that are based on ZK based, so for example, validity proof based rollups, or you could have, for example, optimistic execution model based rollups. You could have these rollups that run different runtimes. For example, you could have EVM based rollups or WASM based rollups, Solana EVM based rollups, and so on. And some of these rollups have different purposes as well. So you could have a general purpose rollup, for example, Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync, and others. You could have application-specific rollups that you could build using, let's say, OP Stack or Arbitrum Orbit, and so on. And they could be deployed in different contexts. For example, it could be a layer 2. For example, you could attach them to base chain, for example, Ethereum, for DA needs, or it could be implemented as a layer 3 on top of an existing layer 2. But basically, the idea is that because execution has moved out of the base chain, now people have all sorts of flexibility because they are no longer limited by the constraints that a base chain provides or restricts you. And so people are building different types of execution layers that have different characteristics. So you can mix and match different features of your execution layer that best suits your application business needs. And so this is not surprising that when you look at the space today, you have all sorts of execution layers or rollups out there in the market today, ranging from persistent application, general purpose rollups like ZK Sync, Arbitrum, Optimism, but also very specific application-specific rollups like OP Stack-based rollups and so on. And so what has happened is because of the different execution environments or the different execution needs or different execution characteristics that have come up, we are seeing a fragmentation of the entire execution space today. And as a result, if you are a new application developer and want to build your own application specific infrastructure, so your own application specific execution layer, you'll have a hard time in some way because you have to deal with all the heterogeneity that comes from this fragmented execution space. There's a lack of, for example, a single development framework that you could use to build your own application dedicated infrastructure. And even though there are some SDKs that are offered, sometimes they are very low level. So it requires still quite a bit of understanding of how rollups work, which might not be the expertise of some of the application builders out there. And so the goal was to kind of build something that could unify the entire space in some way, right? When we started, we were thinking about, okay, how could we build a universal execution framework for all Web3 execution needs? And so it's a question that we kind of know the answer to, right? Because if you look at the space in the Web2 world, you have this giant Amazon Web Services. And so if you're a developer and you're building anything, right, from a startup to even a medium or big or large scale venture, you outsource your compute or storage capacity to Amazon Web Services because it's much more convenient, it's cost efficient, and also it kind of takes away all the hassle of maintaining that infrastructure yourself. And so the idea was to kind of learn from what AWS has done for the Web2 space and kind of take it a little bit forward and move it to the Web3 space. So can we do this? And the answer is yes, we can do it. Let's assume that you were able to build an AWS for Web3 of some sort, right? Then what would happen, right? So one thing is it could reduce cost for all developers. So right now, if you're going to build an application dedicated infrastructure today, it will take you millions of dollars to go and build it. If you're not using something like, let's say, an SDK that is very tailored to application specific infrastructure. It requires a lot of dev resources, right? And this is a good example of this is, for example, DYDX, right? DYDX was decided to build an application dedicated infrastructure. They announced it sometime mid last year. And it's almost about a year now and it's still not out there yet, right? Because it takes time to go and build application specific or application tailored infrastructure in the blockchain in the blockchain world. And so if you had something like AWS, then you could rapidly innovate. So you could very easily go and deploy a fully customized infrastructure, and you could host your application on that infrastructure. And when you feel like this is something that you really need, you can customize in all sorts of ways. The second thing is you can scale. So these infrastructure can scale depending on based on applications that you have. And so this leads to sorry. And so the goal was to kind of build something like AWS, but in the Web3 space. And so the idea was to kind of build something what we call today as roll-up as a service solution. So roll-up as a service didn't exist a couple of months, when we started back in 2021. But now it has become quite a popular theme outs, and a lot of interesting projects are building in the space around roll-up as a service solutions. So what does it offer you? So a roll-up as a service platform such as AltLayer allows anyone to go and deploy a fully customized application dedicated rollup within minutes. And it should be doable by any non-technical team member. So imagine, for example, you're a business person or a marketing person in a team, and you would like to have, or at least experience or even deploy or innovate using an application dedicated infrastructure. You should be able to do that. And it shouldn't take you months or years to be able to deploy that. So the goal was to make it as easy as possible for anyone to go and deploy these application tailored rollups. And so that's what the goal of, sorry, my slides are jumping. So the goal was so if you had something like AltLayer's rollup as a service, what could you get from this? So one is, because as I said, it's designed as a no-code framework. So anyone with zero coding experience should be able to go and launch an application dedicated infrastructure by themselves. And so it makes it much easier for anyone, really. And so the second thing is, once you have it, when it becomes easier, it also means that it becomes low cost. And it's also fast to deploy, right? And what's really interesting, and I think it's one of the core component, is that when you have infrastructure like this to deploy a roll-up for yourself, then if you are an application builder, then you can go and focus on your core expertise. So imagine, for example, you're a game developer, then you can go and focus on game development rather than worrying about, how do I go and manage my infrastructure, and how do I go about maintaining nodes that I have been running for my roll-up here. And so all of that goes away because you're basically outsourcing all of that component to a roll-up as a service provider, which basically gives you a managed service of that kind. And so where do we stand in terms of roll-up as a service provider? So we are the only ones. AltLayer is the only one that offers a unique kind of roll-up that we call ephemeral roll-ups, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a minute. And so it's a roll-up that is basically disposable in nature. And so you can spin up this roll-up, you can use it for as long as you want, and when you feel like you're done with it, you can take it down. It's one of the only RAS providers today that runs with deep sequencing. So this is something that has been a point of debate in the last couple of weeks or even months, where you want to make sure that you don't run with a single sequencer, because it can create liveness issues, can create issues where if your sequencer goes down, you will have to find ways to get your transactions processed. The second and third thing is we are the only ones that have working fraud proofs on the testnet at the moment, and we hopefully will go in the mainnet very soon. So our dashboard, which allows people to go and deploy these rollups, already live. So you want to play around with it, go to dashboard.all.technology. There are several, I would say, tiers depending on, these are pricing tiers, but there's a free version that you can go and try. This allows you to deploy a rollup that will last for about 2 hours. When you feel like you're done with it, you can take it down. There are two kinds of rollups that we offer at the moment. One that we call ephemeral rollups or flash layers. So as I mentioned, these are rollups that are disposable in nature. The second one is what we call persistent rollups. So these are rollups that are basically something like arbitrum optimism, but for dedicated applications. So it doesn't go down for immediately; it stays there forever. And the last part is rollups that. So by the way, these two rollups, the flash layers and the persistent multi-chain rollups, these are both built using our own tech stack. But we're also in the process of integrating external SDKs. So, for example, Arbitrum Orbit, which allows people to go and deploy Arbitrum-based L3s. And the idea is to kind of offer people a framework, a dashboard from where they can go and deploy Arbitrum Orbit-based L3s. So we are adding support for third-party rollup SDKs as well. And so let's come back to these flash layers or ephemeral rollups. So these, as I said, these are rollups that are disposable in nature, and they're ideal for applications that drive a decent number of transaction volume, but in a very short span of time. So imagine something like a mint event, which could be extremely popular and hyped, and you want to make sure that it doesn't create a gas war-like situation if you want to host it on a general purpose chain. So take, for example, UK Labs, right? For example, so if you're doing UK Labs and you want to do a mint event, you know that your project or your mint event is going to be super hyped, and you want to make sure that that doesn't create a gas war-like situation. So you would spin up this rollup that would be disposable in nature. So you do your mint event. So once you have spun up your rollup, you do your mint event on the rollup, and once you feel like you have sold out all your NFTs and there's nothing left to do, and at that point you can basically take down this rollup, and all the assets that were minted on the rollup will go back to the base chain. And at that point, you can basically take down the infrastructure and all the assets move back to base chain, for example, Ethereum, and any node infrastructure, for example, RPC endpoint and those sort of things will go away and will be taken down. And so it's a very resource optimized version of rollups. The second, and as I said, the benefits are multiple. One is, as I said, if you are minting NFTs, for example, if you're using for a very short span of time, it allows you to kind of have a dedicated block space, but in a very kind of resource optimized manner. People would be familiar with user experience, will have familiar user experience in the sense that if you are your users are familiar with EVM, you can have EVM runtime on the rollup side as well, and it's very your assets go back to the base chain. So, for example, if you're an NFT project, it's very important for you to have liquidity, and so you want your assets to go back on Ethereum so that you can trade. Your users can go and trade on OpenSea and enjoy all the liquidity benefits that Ethereum and the base chain provides you. And so the second part, this was the flash layer. So these are rollups that are disposable, and now I'm talking about the persistent rollups. So these are rollups that stay there forever. So they don't go down, they don't get taken down, they stay there forever. And these are ideal for anything that has a longer term kind of perspective. So imagine, for example, a DeFi project or a GameFi project, a SocialFi project. So these projects would be ideally should be on a persistent rollup because they'll prefer to have a longer term infrastructure. AltLayer has been there for quite a while now. So we have been experimenting AltLayer's tech in a variety of settings, in particular NFT mint events and gaming. So, for example, we hosted twice already, and I think we are hosting one more event of Dark Forest soon. And so Dark Forest, every time we did host a Dark Forest, and we received about 200K transactions a day from about 300 to up to 800 players. So our tech is already being used for different activities, ranging from games to SocialFi to NFTs. There's some other usage metrics more on the tech side. So we ran a campaign a few months ago on flash layers. So we allowed people to go and deploy flash layers, and we asked them to go and do transactions on those flash layers. And during that campaign, we received about 100 million transactions on those flash layers. We'll come back to it in a minute, but we also have a network called Beacon Layer, which basically acts as a decentralized sequencing layer, and Yauchi will give a talk about this later. And that has already been live on testnet, and that has done about 250,000 transactions already. We also have a multi-sequencer testnet, so there's a testnet that has multiple sequencers. They run a local consensus protocol among themselves, and that has also been live, and it has done close to about 1.5 million transactions already. So as I said, this is Rollup as a Service Day. Our idea was to bring together experts in the rollup and the modular space to discuss and share insights on the latest technical developments and economic points of view. We have an exciting lineup of speakers and talks. This will range from shared sequencing to role of restaking. So Sriram from AltLayer will be coming up next after the talk. We have talks on MEV, PBS designs, and economic designs for rollups. So this will be mostly talks to start with. We have a panel towards the end with Stephanie from Masari, Patrick McCory from Arbitrum, and Medha from Variant. And really at the end, we'll have a Q&A session with myself and Yao Chi if you have any questions around rollups in general, rollup as service platforms, but also AltLayer in particular. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and enjoy the talks.